Good morning, good morning, good morning. Those of you who are logging on, wherever you are, we welcome you on this October morning that doesn't feel like October yet. I feel like I'm playing October. I was going to drive up to Dahlonega yesterday to scout out a place, but I just didn't feel like going to the mountains. It's too warm. It's got to get cooler before I go up there. Yeah, it's just another lie. I don't believe it anymore. Come in. Apologies for the parking situation. I don't know. Are we like just right in the middle of soccer season? So is that what it is? Oh. He said soccer season starts in July and ends in June. Well, anyway, you made it. We're here. Let's get centered and aware of the presence of God. We're always in the presence of God, but let's intentionally become more aware of it right now, especially because we're in the presence of one another. Yes, the strength comes from God, but it comes from God through us. The cross is vertical and horizontal, so we're experiencing the horizontal revelation today. Where two or more are gathered together, that's where the synergy is. That's where the Christ is. That's where the manifestation is. That's where the power is. Just take a moment of gratitude. Think about what you're grateful for this morning. David said, gratitude's an access point. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving, into his courts with praise. If you don't know how to get into a place of consciousness, to be aware that you're in God's presence, the gratitude gate will always work. That door is always open. So just think about what you've experienced this week and the good things that have happened, the blessings that you've experienced, the blessings that you've already had this morning. We're blessed to be here. We're blessed that we have this space. It might have been a challenge to find parking, but you're blessed that you had a car to drive over here. You must have been able to afford gas because you were able to drive over here. You obviously have some clothes in your closet because you're wearing clothes. I'm assuming you had something to eat this morning, and if you didn't, it was just your choice. It wasn't because you didn't have it. And so you just start cracking that door open with those things, those gratitude pieces. Let's just for a point of reference, just lift up your hands and let's just become an access point. Lift up your head, O you gates, and the King of glory will come in. We become the gates of God. We open up the doors. The door moves into the secret place. The door opens out into the world. God is great and greatly to be praised. Great is the Lord. How excellent is your name in all the earth. We lift up praises to our God, our higher power, our Creator. We say it's good to be alive. In your name. Before you're seated today, I want to do something a little different. We usually open with the Lord's Prayer, but this week was the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, and his famous prayer is that whole thing about where there is hatred. Yeah. Well, this is a little bit of it's putting that prayer into an affirmation instead of saying, where there is hatred, let me so love. Well, you'll see. So this is the quantum prayer of St. Francis. So let's say it together. Beloved, I am an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, I am love. Where there is injury, I am pardon. Where there is doubt, I am faith. Where there is despair, I am hope. Where there is darkness, I am light. Where there is sadness, I am joy. Divine Master, I seek to console rather than be consoled. I seek to understand rather than be understood. I seek to love rather than be loved. For it is in giving that we receive, in pardoning that we are pardoned, and in dying to our own limitations that we live. I am an instrument of your peace. Isn't that really powerful? Just tweaking that little bit and making it into, I'm not praying that I become that, I'm declaring that I am that already. There's just a lot of power in that. Greet someone and then you may be seated. Come on in. Hey, Ernie, come in. Thanks for being here last week. It was last week was when Johnny was here, right? If so much happens in a week, was that last week? Yeah, he really did great, and I love that guy. Thanks for being here for that. Our outreach this month, we usually do all of our stuff like this through Red Cross. I've been working with the Red Cross for years, but we want to do it for the Hurricane Helene relief. And I mean, it's terrible. Jared's mother lives in right outside of Asheville, and their next door neighbors were both killed. Her husband found them in the house next door, and I mean, it's just terrible. So, and please, that FEMA's not out of money. That's not true. What people are saying, the money's not being given to. If you hear that, please have some discernment and recognize when a picture is AI, and don't, like, we let a lot of the lying that's going on slide, but on times the lying right now it's very dangerous, and there's money in FEMA to help these people, and they are being given money. That initial $750 is something that's just there that you don't have to go through the red tape. The rest of it, that's just like if you need something this minute. The rest of it is still available. I just, I pray that wherever you are on the political spectrum, at least just believe the truth and have some discernment. Because just the lack of discernment is astounding to me, especially people are supposed to have the Holy Spirit. Like, how do you honestly can't tell that's a lie? I mean, is there not something in you that says that's not true? I could tell immediately when I read something that's a lie. There's something in me that's like, that's not true. Even if it's somebody that I want to believe, I'm like, I don't think so. And so I just pray that what? I mean, whatever you want to believe politically, fine. Right. But anyway, no, but it's just not true. Nobody's not being responded to. It's just a lot. I mean, there's only so much they can do, though. I mean, in some of these areas, the roads have been wiped out. They can't even get help into them. So it's not anyway, just please believe the truth. Just please. And if you, at least just don't exacerbate the lie. Like if there's a lie, before you just hit share and continue to share that, remember you're sometimes a lie is not such a big deal, but right now it's very destructive. So I just pray that people have some discernment and stop being deceived. It's just a trip. Anyway, but that's what we're giving to this month. Also, we have Meditation Weekend number 23 coming up in just a few days, October 26th and 27th in Dahlonega. And I'm believing that's going to be great. And a lot of you already signed up to go. So all that area is fine. None of that's been affected, so that's not a concern. I think that's everything. Let's do about a little 5-minute meditation if we can. I know we already did some affirmations, which I like the way you did that, Michelle. I want to thank Michelle, Avery, and especially Michelle, because I try to get her my stuff early in the day, and yesterday, I don't know why, God just wasn't returning my calls. I'm like, well, I spoke at this thing Friday night, the inclusion conference, and that went really, really well. And then I think I just used up all my. That was over at Spirit and Truth, and I think I used up all my revelation. I think I gave him everything I had, and that's right before the service. My cousin LaDonna. Anyway, so I messaged. I always like to give it to Avery because she does the shout out that most of y'all don't read. That thing. When people say, "What's the shout out?" That thing we've been sending you every week for a decade that has all the information. That, It only took BJ 8 years before he finally started. When people text me something like they ask me a question, I'm like, "It's in the shout out." They're like, "The what?" Put it back up. I am an instrument of your. But I texted them. I said, "I don't know. I may have some notes for you. I may not. I've left several messages for the higher power, and he, she, it ain't returning any calls today. But the gifts and callings of God without repentance, and so I will have a word. Thank you for those of you that come out and keep believing that." Why am I telling you that? We're going to do a meditation. Okay. Yeah, thank you. One thing that was funny, go ahead and start the music. One thing that was funny Friday night, DE had lots of speakers scheduled. It was like speaker song, speaker song, speaker song. And you only had an allotted amount of time. And if you went past it, the music started playing like they do at the Oscars, which is kind of cool. I thought I actually don't mind that. All right. We've already made affirmations, and there's a great energy in this place. Just sit up straight, both feet on the floor. Relax yourself. We're going to breathe in through the nose and hold it, then out through the mouth. Inhale. Exhale. Let all that oxygen get into your brain and all through your body. Inhale. Exhale. In. Out. Inhale. Exhale. And just let yourself relax into the presence of God. Let your mind be at peace. Whatever needs to happen this week will happen. It'll work out. Don't think about things right now. Just let your thoughts settle down so you can be focused on what we're going to talk about today. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is still here. The Word is accessible. The Spirit is vibrating over the face of the deep. So I'm just going to be quiet, and I just want you to settle down and be at peace. Just stay consistent in your breathing. still and know that I'm God. Be still and know that I am. Be still. Be still and know. Be. Let's do about 3 breaths and then we'll come out of it. Inhale. Exhale. In. Out. Inhale. Exhale. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. Y'all ready for the word? Welcome to the Metron Live podcast, coming to you from the Atlanta Theater in the Kirkwood neighborhood of Midtown Atlanta. Metron people, would you please welcome the podcast people? Let them know somebody's here. There are live bodies in this room. And I love the streamers and I love the podcasters, but the people, if you live in town, the people that actually get in your cars and drive over here, I really, really appreciate it. I could just speak into a camera, but I prefer talking to some people. And it's not just so you're here. I mean, I want you all to see each other. Sometimes I think we need to spend some time at the end fellowshipping a little more. Maybe I'll shut up early today and let y'all just drink some coffee and talk a little bit. But anyway, I speak in this atmosphere and say, let there be light. I don't know this is going to be a series. Let me see how today goes. I may just want to talk about this today. I've certainly talked about it before. Before I put the comments up, I try to pay attention to things that happen during the week that I believe is little by little a message being distilled in me. It's line upon line, precept upon precept. And this kind of thing happens to me so much. Like a couple of weeks ago, remember I told you when I drove down to Howie's mom's funeral, I was talking about the unveiled Christ. And then I walk in to the Assembly of God Church there where the funeral is going to be. And they're playing a recording of his parents singing the unveiled Christ. Things like that, to me, it's not that I base everything on confirmation, but it's little green lights from the universe. This is probably TMI, but yesterday, Ken's very patient. Yesterday, as we finally left, because I tried to get my outline out in the morning, I said, I got nothing. My tank's empty. Let's go get lunch, and let me go to a Starbucks, and I'll sit there, and it'll come to me. So we went and got lunch, and then I'm sitting there, and it's not like he's being impatient, but I keep going, I'm sorry. I clearly have forgotten how to preach. I start feeling insane for a minute. Like this, I know I've read the Bible. I remember. And all this week, like one night this week, I wanted to walk up to, I live just a couple blocks from Mercedes-Benz, and I wanted to walk up there. I hadn't seen any of what they're doing in the Gulch down there. So I thought I'll just walk up there and I'll look at the construction. I didn't know there were 2 games going on that night. The Falcons were playing and somebody was playing something at State Farm. So there were people everywhere, which is fine, but it meant there were street preachers everywhere. I mean, I think I got told I was going to hell about 20 times. And I wanted to go, y'all, people are just trying to go see a ball game. I mean, just, let me buy you a ticket to come in and just relax and enjoy the game. And people kept trying to hand me, tracts. Oh, my God, these people, they're relentless. And even yesterday, I'm getting back to Ken and the Starbucks. But even yesterday, we were over at Atlantic Station, and these 3 young girls walked by, cute young black girls. The way they responded to me, I thought they knew me. Because that does happen. Like while I was walking the other night, it was Howie's birthday, so I called him. I said, first of all, happy birthday. You can't believe these street preachers out here. They are relentless. And I'm going, I'm saved. Shut up. And while I was talking, this couple drove up, and they were like, Bishop Swilley, and I said, you clearly know who I am. I don't know who you are. Like, we used to go to your church. I'm like, okay, hey, we love you. I'm like, all right, come to Metron. But so yesterday we're walking around Atlantic Station. These girls come up, and the way they responded to me, I'm thinking, these must be girls that know. They went to church. No, they're wanting to get me saved. And I said, they showed me this thing about the book of Revelation. I said, well, I'm a minister. I've been in the ministry 53 years. And they're like, yeah, but do you know what the mark of the beast is? I said, oh, girls, I can't do mark of the beast today. I said, y'all gonna have to take the mark of the beast somebody else. I've already been told I'm going to hell all week, and now y'all trying to put the mark of the beast on me. I'm gonna have to go find somebody nice. So anyway, come on in. So anyway, back to Ken in the in Starbucks. So I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I got nothing to say. I got nothing. And he did say, he said, why don't you think about things that happened during the week? And I thought, yeah, okay. So then we went shopping. But then I did start thinking about what happened during the week. And I remembered, because I just told you this thing had happened at Howie's mom's funeral, and stuff like that happens to me a lot. So Monday of this past week, I was sitting at a different Starbucks, the one over there by where Metron used to meet. And I was writing meditation. And while I was online, I came across this picture from maybe 20 years ago of being on the Amazon River. It's a picture. I'm on a boat on the Amazon. And some of you that went to church now, you remember Phil Howard. He was a friend of mine for many years. And we're still friends. We never had a falling out. We're just in different seasons. We just don't talk. We'll go a year at the time and not talk. So I'm not regularly hearing from Phil. But while I'm trying to think about what I want to write for this meditation, I'm also scrolling and looking at pictures. And I look at this picture of the Amazon, being on the Amazon, and I thought, God, how many years? I can't believe the way the years pass. While I'm thinking it, I get a text from Phil Howard. What is this? And he texts me this picture. And he says, can you believe this was however many years? Where did the years go? And he apparently has lost. I posted this. I didn't post this part of it. I cut this part out. But Phil's lost a lot of weight since then. He said his point was, this is back when my kids used to call me Fat Phil, and I'm not fat now. But so I had to call him. I said, I know you're going to think I'm making this up. I swear to Jesus, I was just looking at this picture thinking, where do the years go? I said, we probably haven't talked in a year, and you text me this picture and say, where do the years go? And so we started talking, and we had this, one thing about Phil, when we do talk, he can go very cerebral, very spiritual quickly. I don't even ask, how's Mamie's kitchen? That's just not the way I talk. We go right into, he says something like, well, we met previously before we got here, and we agreed to come. And I'm like, okay, that's deep, but you may be on to something, because my point was, even though we don't talk every day, we're clearly still communicating. So just because we don't hang out like we used to. I mean, he lives in Monroe, and I'm in a different life, and it's just different now. But I said, we clearly still communicate, and it was just another signpost of like, no, you're in the zone. It may not feel like you have a word for today, but it's like I hear Spirit saying, I've been trying to tell you this all week. So I start telling Phil these other corroborating stories. I told him a story, which, Leslie, if you're watching down in Darien, Leslie messaged me last week, she said, what did she say exactly? She said something like, I got to read her. Leslie, I got to read your text, because it was funny. Not many people can exhort me like this, but She's because, and Avery, you will like this because you say this to me all the time too. Because a lot of times when I retell something, I always give the disclaimer. I know I've said this before, and she says, I was shouting and clapping yesterday during the message. My aside is this: Barbara, meaning Streisand, doesn't say, I know you have heard me sing people 100 times. Here I go again. No, she sings that song because it moves us and her. Whatever Spirit brings to you is just like you said, fine wine. Please always be serving. Wisdom speaks in all your inclinations. In other words, she was saying, Streisand doesn't get up and say, I know you've heard me sing people before, but I'm going to do it one more time. Because that's everybody bought a ticket to hear her sing it one more time. So y'all going to hear my stories again. And you're welcome. Well, that's true. I do try to tweak them just a little bit. But I was telling Phil this story about years ago when I was working with the Global Peace Festival. That was, the son of Reverend Moon. I told him, I said, look, I'm all about y'all doing the ecumenical bridge building. If that's what this is about, I'm on board. I just need to tell you, I'm not going to convert to the Unification Church. Y'all need to know that coming in. I have no issue with you. I don't think Reverend Moon's a false prophet. That's just not my jam. So as I told the girls yesterday, ladies, I've been talking about the mark of the beast years before y'all were born. Please leave me alone. But and they didn't take no for an answer. They were like, but you need to know. I'm like, oh, it really surprised me because they just looked like girls. They didn't look like holiness. You know what I mean? A lot of times you can tell if it's a Mormon or somebody coming. That's why it caught me off guard, because I thought, oh, these just, they just look like the other girls around there. They didn't look holiness or something, but buddy, they were. Anyway, so this one time, they flew me all over the world. We're super. If anybody from Global Peace Festival is watching, please don't be insulted in this, because it was a wonderful season in my life. And the largest crowd in my life I ever preached to was in Seoul, Korea, and I got to minister in Israel and in Palestine. I mean, I will never take for granted that beautiful season. But there was this one time where they flew me to New York, and they wanted me to go to these meetings, and it was clearly indoctrination. I thought, y'all, I told y'all, I'm not doing this. And I didn't want to be confrontational, but I could not sit there for hours and have a brainwashing thing. So I just thought, well, sorry, but I'm about to go sightseeing in New York. I mean, I'm in New York, so I'm going to sight. That's what I'm going to do. It's not like I said y'all might be able to convert me. I told y'all this is the deal from the get-go, and now y'all are doing not the deal. So I got up, and I thought, I'm just going to walk around New York. And I thought, I've never been to Soho. I'm going to go to Soho. So I get on the subway, and I go down there, and I'm checking out that neighborhood. And it's like in the afternoon, I'm just looking around like, I'm going to have lunch somewhere. And this was a period of a time when I would go big chunks of time without knowing where Jared was. Like he was, I mean, it's not like he was on a drunk somewhere. He just was in Europe, and I would have no idea where he was for sometimes months on end. And so while I'm walking around that day, for some reason I'm thinking about Jared, thinking about all my kids, but I'm also thinking, I wonder where he is. I hope he's okay. Just like, thoughts that just coming in and out of your mind, popping in and out constantly. This young, I'm assuming homeless guy comes walking down the street, and he's got like a new, sort of like a, those of you from Atlanta, you know what creative loafing is. It's like a magazine newspaper. It was like a version of that. So he comes walking like right up to me, which I assumed he's going to ask me for money. And he gets up, and he picks up that paper and opens it right in front of my face, and it's a big ad for the Black Lips, which is Jared's band. And He opens this thing, and it's Jared's face. I'm in Soho, and this is a homeless guy, and he goes, "This is all that matters." And he closes it and walks off. I'm like, what the what? And I have not always to that extreme, but a day probably doesn't pass that I don't have something kind of like that happen. It's like I'll be thinking something, and as I'm thinking it, I see it manifested. It's somebody says it, or it's a line in a song, or something. And the reason I want to talk about this today, because it has to do with intuition. And here's my title for today. Oh, that's cool. I like the bulb. Intuition is developing the power of the still small voice. Let me give you this scripture, and then I'll get into why this is important and why I want to talk to you about it. This is a story. This is in 1 Kings 19. And it's part of the story when Elijah was freaking out about Jezebel, and he's running, and he starts spiraling downward. And it's not just about Jezebel. He's like, all the priests have forsaken you. I'm the only one left. And he's just really completely overreacting to whatever he's going through. So God says to him in this story, he says, I want you to climb up on this mountain because the presence of God is about to pass by you. And when the presence passes by, God will speak to you. Well, that's huge. I mean, can you imagine if you hear God say, climb up on Stone Mountain, I'm about to show you, I'm about to reveal myself to you. That's a big deal. So Elijah does. He's like, wow, this is going to be really dramatic. So here's what I'm going to show it to you, I think in 3 different translations. This is 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 11 and 12, first of all in the New King James Version. He says, then he said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, and behold, the Lord passed by. In other words, he said, go up there and wait because my presence is about to pass by. So he does it. He climbs up, and here comes the presence. The Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rock in pieces before the Lord. Now, if God has just said that to you, climb up on this mountain, I'm going to show you my presence, and this happens, what are you going to think? Oh, well, this is the presence of God. I mean, all through Old Testament and New Testament, even in the day of Pentecost, God manifests as a wind, a rushing mighty wind. That's certainly not alien to Jewish thought. So he's assuming, oh, this is the presence of God because it's God, the wind blowing and breaking the rocks in pieces. But the Lord was not in the wind. You feel me on that? It's God saying, I'm about to show you my presence. So you go up on this mountain, here's the presence, and this wind blows, and you're like, that's it. And it's not. And after the wind was an earthquake. Well, that's got to be it. If it wasn't the wind, surely it's the earthquake. I mean, God told me to come up on this mountain. Stuff's happening. I mean, it's clearly going down. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. This is this spectacular display of weather phenomena that especially people at this time would have clearly read something into. Because before there was science, the reason that we have the Genesis story about God put a rainbow in the cloud is because people had no idea what makes rainbows happen. I mean, we know now rainbows are lights refracting through color. I don't know how to. You know what it is. It's like but there is something about when you see a rainbow after a rainstorm. It does speak to hope. There is clearly, you can see why the theological dots would have been connected for that. Because there is something about it, even though it's just light. I mean, you can be watering your lawn, and the water hose can make a rainbow just by the way the lights come refracting off the water. But it still means something like every time there's a rainbow, I don't necessarily think that it's God. However, that double rainbow that appeared when we were in St. Simon's, the timing of that felt very different than just your average rainbow, especially because it hadn't rained all day that day. There was no rain on the island. The whole weekend we were there, I don't remember it raining at all. And it's just while we were talking, this huge double rainbow appeared. So it would be easy to say, oh, this must be it. It's the wind, it's the earthquake, it's the fire. But the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire, a still small voice. This is a huge concept, because it's saying that Spirit speaks to you in subtlety. And if you don't know that, you'll be distracted by every shiny object that comes along. Every time there's a storm, every time there's an earthquake, every time there's a wind, every time that's a fire. But it's not coming from the outside, it's coming from the inside. I don't know if you've ever disobeyed the still small voice. I have. And the reason it's easy to do is because it's still and small. And it's just easy to shoo it away and go, oh no, that's nothing. I'm imagining that. Or it's not, but if a wind would have gotten your attention, an earthquake would have slapped you upside the head, a fire would have scared you. It would have demanded attention. A still small voice. You know why we meditate? It's to just get your eyes off the earthquakes and the fire and all the stuff that's going on, so you can listen to yourself for a minute. Even, may I say, a whole lot of prayer is wind and earthquake and fire. Sometimes you need to be quiet and stop the praying and all that. You need to be quiet because you're being distracted with storms and winds and fires. And again, let me tell you this wonderful story. But back in July, that whole thing that happened with the word Zephyr, I'm telling you, that word had already, man, I can feel it now. As I'm talking about it, I feel it. That word had been coming up all day, and we had survived what could have been Ken's third stroke, and he was coming back to himself again, enough that he said to me, I wish I had an ice cream. And I said, well, let me go down to, they may have it. So I'm not thinking anything spiritual. I'm thinking, thank God he wants an ice cream. Because I thought I'd lost him day before yesterday. But I'll walk a mile to get you an ice cream. I'm so happy you're alive. And I get on this elevator. Young man, he's wearing scrubs. I get on and he says, what floor? And I said, first floor, please. He presses the button. He turns and faces me. And on his uniform, it says Zephyr. Now, this is quick. This is just between the third and the first floors. This is how quick this happened. But I said, your name is Zephyr? And this is just the way he said it to me. He said, yes, Jimmy, which I forgot that I was wearing a name tag. Because you had to have a name tag to get on the IC unit. So when he said, yes, Jimmy, I thought, oh, snap. Ken's about to go, and I'm about to go with him. He's taking me with him. Because this guy, I don't want to exaggerate it. It's not like he was glowing or anything, but there was something very different about him. As I told you before, all the other men in that hospital, their scrubs were navy blue. This was kind of like a light taupe color. Was it an angel? You said it was. Danny weighed in as an elder. A few days later, he said, I need to tell you something. I need to give my judgment. That was an angel in the elevator. I said, all right, I think it was too. But it's the way he turned to me and he said, he did his arms like this. Yes, Jimmy, a zephyr is a gentle breeze from the west. And I said, yeah, I know, because I had just Googled it that morning. And I get off the elevator. There's no ice cream down there. But several times since then, especially if I've been outside, but sometimes it happens on the inside. If I'm frustrated, worried, distracted, intimidated, if I'll get quiet, I feel a gentle breeze. Just a gentle, that's what a zephyr is. Still small voice is an internal zephyr. It's intuition. It's your inner GPS system. Let me show, this is what verse 12 says in the Amplified Classic. And after the fire, a sound of gentle stillness and a still small voice. Listen to that, or look at that. A sound of gentle stillness. Do you know most things that are freaking you out, you don't even have to pray about if you'll just disconnect yourself and go get quiet for a minute? If you're at work and you're freaking out about something, go sit in your car. Do something and say, I need a minute. You know, John and Charles Wesley that started the Methodist Church, but really powerful men of God. Their mother, Susanna, raised them, and they credited everything they knew about God from her. And she had something like 14 children. Now, this is back in the 1700s. When you got 14 kids in the 1700s, there's no daycare. There's no TV to put them in front of. You're with a house full of kids all day long. But she taught them early on. She said she would sit in her kitchen and she'd put an apron on her head. And she said, kids, when the apron's on my head, that means I'm alone with God. Do not talk to me. Because that's the only way. I mean, you can't, when you got little babies, you can't go out for a walk and leave them. I mean, you know, I see these young couples or young people that are having babies. I think, y'all don't even know. Because it's, your autonomy's gone for a period of time. You're not gonna be. You can't leave the house. You can't. Even if you leave them with somebody, you're worried. You know, you get some sleep now because you ain't gonna sleep for a long, long time. And I always thought that story just impressed me. That one of the Wesleys said, "We knew when the apron was on her head, leave her alone." I thought, man, that's talk about finding a secret place. But the point is, I'm surrounded by earthquakes and fire and hurricanes, and God ain't in any of it. I got to get quiet and find out where God is. This is what it says in The Voice. This is 1 Kings 19:12. After the fire died out, there was nothing but the sound of a calm breeze. And through this breeze, a gentle, quiet voice entered into Elijah's ears. The reason I liked this translation, it says, after the fire died out. Meaning, this is how I interpreted it. Sometimes a storm in your life comes to clear the air. And after the fire dies out, you have some clarity. You have some focus. You have some perception. You understand what really matters. I would suggest to you that God's speaking to you all day long, but there's so much noise around you that you just don't hear it. And that's why you have to pay attention to subtleties. You have to pay attention to, when somebody says something to you and there's just a resonance to it, something in you says, yeah, that felt different. I'm telling you, that little encounter I had with that guy, it couldn't have been more than, it had to be less than a minute. However long it takes from the third floor to the first floor, it was life-changing for me. And I can't tell you many times I've thought of it again. When I start to get upset about something, I see his hands. Yes, Jimmy. That's just not the way people on the ICU ward talk. A zephyr is a gentle breeze from the west. And when as I told you, when I went and looked, the Greeks believed that there were 4 gods of the wind. And like the north wind was destruction. The north wind meant, all hell's about to break loose. And but the west wind, which was named after Zephyrus, where we get the word zephyr, it meant like the coming of spring. It's like it's subtle. It's like the terrible storms are over, and now you're going to start to hear birds singing and flowers blooming, and it's not only a gentle wind, it's a wind that has promise to it. It's a wind that says, relax, everything's going to be okay. And it's the after the fire died out part that really resonates with me. Anybody been through the fire? Anybody in here? Anybody had an earthquake? You know what I'm talking about? Anybody had some winds blow your stuff down? And sometimes it's after all of that settles down that you finally get quiet. You know why you get quiet? You don't really have an alternative. It's like, I had nothing else to say. I've been screaming at this wind all night long. And I just want to, are you going to pray right now? No, I'm too tired to pray. I'm going to sit. I'm going to be. Y'all know what it means just to be? Just to be somewhere and you think, I'm not thinking anything, I'm not planning anything, I'm not intending anything, I'm not regretting anything. Quite frankly, it's the very definition of being in the now. Because most of the winds and earthquakes and all that stuff is past knowledge or future fear that's keeping you anxious. When you're in the now, everything's okay. All right, this is a basic definition of intuition. Is when you don't know how you know, but you know, and you know you knew, and you know you knew, and that's all you need to know. And I'll tell you this, I can't say this is an exact science. I'm not going to say it's the word of the Lord, but I've noticed over the years that when I meet somebody, nearly the first thing I think about them is nearly always the truth. And then later, I'll think something else. But again, you can't make a science out of it. But sometimes there'll be just the way somebody says something to you. You hear them before you meet them. That's why Phil and I ended up talking a long time just about these concepts. Talking about, we went immediately into how much do you think we chose, to come here? Because I'm fascinated with that idea. Because if that is true, and I can't prove that it's true, but if that is true, it's very empowering. Because sometimes I think if I chose to come here before I came here, then whatever I have to deal with, I must have known I could handle it, or I wouldn't have chosen this path. I must have chosen to, like even yesterday I was reading when I was trying to think of what I was going to talk about today. Somehow I ended up over Jeremiah in that first chapter. And it's always so interesting because he says, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Not, I knew who you were going to be. The implication is you existed before you were born. I would say this physical manifestation is just an avatar of who you really are. You've always been around. Let that abide in you which you heard from the beginning. And it's when you tap into that eternalness of you, that's when everything works out. It's when you get pulled into the earthquake, the fire, the chaos. Once you get pulled into it, then you become a part of it. Now I'm going to show you this. No one talks about the gut-wrenching regret you feel when you realize your instincts were right all along, but you didn't listen. Can I get a what up in here today? Because I've done it many times. When a thing would happen, and I think, you know what? You knew that. I knew that. I knew that. I knew that. What? That's the least of it. Before Ken and I met, I was in a previous relationship, and it was what it was. But I remember, and I'm not talking about Debbie. Y'all know this is after that. The first time I met this person, we met for lunch. And you know when you meet somebody for lunch for the first time, and the bill comes, and you're meeting there because you met on a site, if you're not going to split the bill, you're going to at least make the attempt. You know what I mean? He wasn't the first person I'd met for lunch. And usually it's like, oh, well, let's split this, or we get separate checks, or, you know, I don't even know this person. And I remember the day the check came, and he sat there and kept eating. And I remember, which of course I paid it, because what are you going to do? I'm that guy. So I paid it, but I remember it was a red flag. Because he didn't say, you want to half this, or let me get it. It was just like, suddenly, oh, this is your responsibility. You pay for stuff. And so a year later, when he stole from me and left me $10,000 in debt, I remember thinking, well, I clearly as a bell, I thought, you remember, you were not blindsided by this. You remember clearly how you felt that day, thinking, but I thought, no. And I want to find somebody, and, you know, other things I said to myself, you know, that can blur, you know, cloud your judgment. Sometimes if you're looking for something, you end up compromising on things. And oh, that's not that. Sometimes, what? Some churches say amen, somebody. Here we say girl. And I'm not saying that's always true, but a lot of times when something comes into your life, pay attention to red flags because you want a thing to happen. No, I want this job. I want this job. I know this is a red flag, but I need this job. Maybe not. That's why when somebody comes to me, it's a little different topic, but when somebody says to me, agree with me, I'm going for this job interview tomorrow, and I've got to get this job, agree with me, I will say, I'm not going to agree you get that job. I'll agree that you have a great interview and that they will see the potential you have. But I don't want, my agreement is powerful. I don't want to add agreement to something that might not be best case for you. And I also know if you really need the job, you'll end up ignoring still small voices. When something is in you saying, pay attention to that, don't do that, don't go there. And sometimes it can save your life. I remember, this is back in the 70s, I was teaching a Bible study. I was away at college. I was teaching a Bible study. I had just talked about this very thing, about paying attention to what's inside. And somebody told me, I don't know if any of y'all remember this, but this would have been like around 77 maybe, and it was called the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. It connected like St. Pete and Tampa, and it collapsed. And really, well, and a lot of people were killed. Well, there was somebody in my Bible study who heard that. He said to me, I take that way home every night, and when you had taught that, something in me said, don't go that way, and I went a different way. He said, if I had not listened to what you said, I would have been on the bottom of Tampa Bay. There were people on the day of 9/11 who woke up and said, you know what, I'm not going into work today. They had no reason to think, I mean, certainly not thinking planes are going to ride into the building. One of the most dramatic stories I remember from that was a woman talking about how she was running down the stairs of one of the towers, and people were running up the stairs. And they said, don't go down to the bottom of the stairs because it's fire. Go up to the roof because helicopters are coming to rescue us. And she said, something in me said, don't listen to them. And she said, I just ran right through that fire. I didn't get burned. But they were all killed but before they could even get on the roof, the thing had already collapsed. Now that's a case of, well, maybe it is prudent to run up. Sometimes the still small voice will say, trust yourself, just keep going. Keep running, even if it looks scary. I know this. If I can get a what we call a word from the Lord, whatever that is to me now, if I know I've heard it, I can walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Once I get that, I'm like, no, I got a word. I'm fine. This will, his rod and his staff, they comfort me. If I don't have it, I might be a basket case because I'm artistic and I'm emotional and it's easy to respond to things. The reason I'm teaching this is I even have to remind myself you have to develop intuition. You have to learn to listen to it. I haven't done a lot of freshwater fishing in my life. Most of the fishing I've done has been deep sea fishing, but I can fish. I can do it. But when I would go, because I fish so rarely, it was hard for me to distinguish when I had something on my line. Because if you're in, lakes have a current in them, so I'd be sitting there on the bank of the river or lake or whatever, and if I felt any drag on my pole at all, I'm trying to bait it. Now, a seasoned fisherman can tell. They're like, no, that's just the pull of it. But if you're not used to it, you'll overreact. Now, if I went every day and fished, I would get to where I could catch fish on the regular. So no, that's not. I know what that feels like, but it's subtle. To people who haven't practiced this, the voice is too still and too small, and they just end up ignoring it. This passage about Elijah is astounding to me because so much of the Old Testament is grandiose. It's, I am the Lord thy God. It's God being over the top. This is like, no, all that stuff that you think is God is not God. Look, there's people sitting in churches today that somebody's in a pulpit screaming and hollering and they're not saying anything. but it captures your attention because of all the commotion. There's no stillness or smallness in it. Let me show you this. This is Jung's quote. He says, intuition is perception via the unconscious that brings forth ideas, images, new possibilities, and ways out of blocked situations. That's why sometimes you have to get away, like if you're too focused on trying to solve a problem and it's not going anywhere, you need to unplug and get away from it. Honestly, that's why going out of town sometimes can be extremely prophetic for you. Because when you're in the middle of all your stuff, you can't hear anything. Sometimes you just need to go somewhere else and have a different point of view. And just getting out of the distraction, you relax enough that you can hear your intuition. When you're in the middle, when you're where the problem is, all you can hear is the problem. When problems are noisy, you got to go to another room. Because when you're just fighting noise with noise, let me tell you something. Sometimes it just makes noise noisier. That's why, I'm totally a city boy. I live in a concrete world. But I understand the power of nature. I understand why it's important to get out and have your feet in some grass and breathe some fresh air. And that's one of the reasons why we do these meditation weekends. It's not just the meditating, it's the getting you into an environment. Let me get you on a beach. Let me get you on a mountain. Let me get you looking at a tree. Most of that does the heavy lifting. I don't have to teach a lot about it. Just get you in that environment. The ocean will speak to you. Some of the most profound things I've ever heard is us just standing on a beach somewhere after we've meditated and we stand in a circle and say, what are you hearing? And just the stuff that people start saying is so intuitive. It's the truth. Next, this Clarissa Pincola Estes says this. Practice listening to your intuition, your inner voice. Ask questions, be curious, see what you see, hear what you hear, and then act upon what you know to be true. These intuitive powers were given to your soul at birth. Friday night, when I went over to Spirit and Truth, D.E. said, I'd like you to speak about authenticity and what your journey was like and all of that. And because it was an inclusion conference, I talked about the drum circle for Ken because there were a lot of religions represented there, and people were very blessed by that story. But then I said, my ministry is so much now about helping people be who they were always meant to be. And I used the scripture that's on that painting that you bought, Romans 9. Can the thing formed, it's talking about pottery, and it says, can the thing formed say to him who formed it, why did you make me thus? And so much of religion is telling you, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And I said, just think about the disciples. The men that Jesus chose were, all over the map. They were just not just a ragtag group, but they took diversity as, I don't think they were color diverse because it was all that part of the country, of the world. But, man, they were diverse in every other way. One was a zealot he was like a terrorist, and he followed Jesus because he believed Jesus was going to overthrow the Roman government. And you got a tax collector, and you got fishermen, and you got Judas, who was, he was what he was from the get-go. And you look at it, Jesus didn't change any of them. In fact, they were chosen apparently because of their eccentricities. And that's one of the worst things about religion is like you've got to change, you've got to conform. No, I even use the thing, and I credit to Doug Wentz with it, but the whole thing about Paul being on the road to demask us, and that what we're doing is becoming who we were always meant to be. And I used when I was teaching, I used this quote by Paulo Coelho. It says, maybe the journey isn't about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that isn't really you so that you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. Now, that flies in the face of the idea of conversion. No, we're taught we pass from death into life. If any man's in Christ, he's a new creature. If you dig deeper in that, it's the becoming a new creature is understanding you are always who you were. You're always who you were meant to be. That's always in there. And the way to become like Christ is to become like yourself. Because you're a part of the Christ. You're a facet in the diamond. Like I talked about last week and the week before, the unveiled Christ. When the curtain is ripped in two, you don't just see Christ, you see yourself. So this is what I want to do before we go today. I know we've already meditated. I just want you to just be quiet for a minute and think about what's distracting you today. What's getting your attention? What's stressing you out? What are you dreading that's coming up? What's problematic? And I don't want you to pray about it. I just want you to be quiet. Just be quiet for a minute. And listen to what your heart tells you. And trust your heart. Let your heart counsel you for a minute. Think about your heart sitting behind a desk and you're going for a therapy session with your heart. What does your heart say about fill in the blank? All right, I'm going to be quiet. Don't listen to me. Listen to you. Okay, it doesn't take a long time. It's usually, if you'll just be quiet, your heart's ready to speak immediately. Can anybody hear themselves? Because of what I've said the last hour, could you hear you? Do you think you gave you good advice? All right, let's stand. Did you get anything out of this today? What's that? I used to do that all the time when people would come to me for counseling, and sometimes by the time they came to you, it's like somebody coming with shoelaces with 37 knots in it. You're like, I don't think this. You should have come to me about 2 years ago. And well, you've developed your intuition. That's the point of this. It's like it's something everybody has. You just have to learn how to develop it. And that's why even when people would come to me, like I was saying, with all the knots and the shoelaces, sometimes I would say, all right, if it was Jesus sitting here behind this desk, what do you think he would tell you? Because I'm like, this is too big for me. And they would 9 times out of 10 tell themselves exactly what to do. Like, well, I think he would tell me to let it go. Then I think you should let it go. I think he would tell me to forgive. Then I think you should forgive. Like, yeah, that's good. Anybody else get anything out of this today? Yeah. Absolutely. Whether it's losing keys or whatever, sometimes not everything's a bad thing. Sometimes it's like it's you climbing up on the mountain saying, I'm going to wait till things get still, and then I'll get to that. Yeah. All right. I told you I didn't like it. Yeah. And that's why, again, it's not an exact science, but the first thing you feel about, or sometimes pay attention to the first thing they say to you. You're like, I'm going to make a mental note of that because that, yeah. Yeah. No, it's exactly right. And it's where we live. I'm telling you, life is, all this stuff happens in a really small margin. And it may be the opposite. Like, I don't know why I'm good like them, but I have an affinity toward them. Yeah. You have to, the more you trust your insides, the better you'll get at it. And anyway, all right, remain standing. Let's play the outro, if you will, please.
Contributing to Metron is quick and easy. You can give anytime using any smartphone. Text the amount you would like to donate to 404-620-5044. You will then receive a notification that you successfully completed your donation. You may also visit bishonthennow.com and click the support tab to give there as well. When you contribute to Metron, you're also donating to the charity or organization of the month. Thank you for your investment into Metron.
Avery, I was gonna talk to you about this today, but I'm not gonna have lunch with you. I don't know if we could add this to Simple Give, but Friday night when I was at Spirit and Truth, they put up on the screen, they had like a QR code and something else that went straight to PayPal, and it was so easy. It was like, oh, I can do that because you know when they're passing the offering, I don't have a checkbook, I don't have cash on me, but I could do that. I don't know. I might want to look into adding that to whatever. Anyway, it was just super easy. All right. I speak to your intuition. I speak to the mind of Christ in you, that you are sensitive to what Spirit says to you. And I don't just mean Holy Spirit. I mean your Holy Spirit, who you are on the inside. I speak protection over you because you have an ear to hear. and that you listen, and that you are quiet, and that you have a beautiful day today and a productive week, and that you wake up tomorrow saying, this is the day the Lord has enabled me to make. I will rejoice and be glad in it. God bless you. Go in peace.